This week in Challengers, we have the Season 2 playoff bracket heating on up. Some of your favorite teams getting sent home already. Hot damn, we got the Bosch signing a brand new team to the Stallions, as well as should we be putting more respect on the Saudi Arabian region's name when it comes to Call of Duty? Enigma and I discuss all of this more this week in Challengers. First round of games last week happened here in the Season 2 Elite Playoff in North America. Hey, listen, stuff isn't really exciting in EMEA. I hate to say it. I would love to be able to cover it, but it was a lot of 3-0s. It was a lot of 3-1s by a lot of the usual suspects, all right? But there's a lot to talk about in North America here with some of these teams, and we really wanted to highlight it. Mainly, we'll talk about maybe the unfortunate situation of some of our teams that you and I expected to maybe do pretty well here in this bracketing, but already getting sent home. Two teams already eliminated from the Elite. We have that FaZe Falcons sort of duo roster coming on in, as well as For Fun Esports. One of their teams getting eliminated. Let's talk about the FaZe Falcons ones first, because I think we have a little bit more to say about this For Fun Esports team bowing out early.
Yeah, I think FaZe Falcons is as good as you could have expected, realistically, right? They get through to playoffs. You pushed Bush to a game 5 in round 1, so, that's a great effort. And then you kind of get sent home in the lower bracket for a top 8 finish. I think you can hold your heads up relatively high about that. Sure. Gentle Knox, Swooty, and King of Body. I don't think anyone would have had them placing higher than that. Maybe you squeak by Death by Cabal, but then it's Brooklyn after that. Would you have gone much further? No. So I think all 4 of these players have been fine. Still curious about whether or not these guys are going to stick together in what feels like a marketing kind of ploy. I don't know, but either way, not a bad season.
No, not bad a season at all. I know we didn't really rank them super high in our power rankings last week. Definitely go check that out if you want to see what we had to say about that team. But I think that's what it is. I think you should probably maybe have some energy there. Maybe every team would have liked to do better than it is, but you gotta have a little bit of sense of realism. But a team that we did expect to do better, that oh my god, they did not, was this main For Fun Esports roster, dog. Geomac, Yuli, and Vivid out top 8. Yikers. Now, they did go against Omit Brooklyn in that first round, and then they go against Project Notorious. So they do go against 2 very heavy-hitting teams, and we and I were kind of like talking about this beforehand, but I'm like, I would be willing to have that conversation about some Challengers teams, except for one that is Geomac, Yuli, and Vivid. That team should be like sprinting through a bracket like this. And so do you think that's more of a mark on like the roster, or just maybe the level of talent that we now have in Challengers, that it's kind of a god squad like this of ex-CDL pros can't just kind of drop down on in here and start to run everything?
I think that, there's conversation on both parts there. I think there is a hell of a lot of talent right now in North American Challengers, particularly in the Elite. And this team getting bounced out so early is fine evidence of that. Yuli, Geomac, Vivid, what I will give them time as for now is, okay, do you still need time to kind of fix certain things and come together? The problem for me is the way you lose. It's double 3-0s. You get bounced straight out of this bracket. A very, very quick day at the office. And I think if you pushed these teams close, I mean, obviously some of the individual maps are close, but like, it's a case of, were you ever in a spot to take this series? Not at all. And that feels very weird to say about this roster. Obviously, you can argue, is it tougher to come up against Brooklyn and Project Notorious? Sure. But we probably would have come into this season being like, this team are going to win. So you would have had to have beaten these rosters at some point anyway. So ridiculous from them right now. Obviously, going to be a lot of talk in the drawing room about whether or not this is a roster that with time will get better. I suspect they will. I can see For Fun standing by them. But also, there's always a roster mania window after these things, after the opens, for example. If this team go to that open and don't perform very well, I'm expecting changes.
I'm right there with you. And the other thing, too, that's tough, and this is where we kind of have to play devil's advocate with ourselves, right, is that it's easy, I think, to look at this roster and be like, oh, yeah, maybe they needed more time to gel as a team. Brother, the people they fought, Project Notorious, also a brand new team that's there. Omit Brooklyn, also a pretty brand new team coming together, right? And that's where like that conversation gets super hard for me. So I want to see that team succeed. I want to see them do well. I think you hit it right on the head. If they do decide to go to the open, how well do they perform? I think anything less, I mean, if that team doesn't get at least top 16, blow it up, guarantee. But that's a team that should probably make a very deep run in a land style bracket for sure. But on the winner side, there's at least one team that we did want to kind of highlight here, right? And that was Falcons Academy Green. They had a fantastic run through this bracket, right? They're actually the team to send that Project Notorious roster down into losers. And then they go up against Omit Brooklyn. And it's back-to-back game fives in each of those games that they're able to make it happen. But they've now secured themselves a spot in the winners finals against the Telluride Bush. No surprise to see Bush here, just looking at the two teams that they fought, right? We don't got to talk too much about the Bush. I want to focus on this Falcons teams because these were two really good series that had some highlight moments in them.
Well, you and me were a little worried about this roster, right? First of all, we didn't know the situation with Roxas and whether or not he would be playing. We got in the neck a little bit on social media. That's what we open ourselves up to. We understand that for not including Falcons Academy in the late stages. But it's a case of, this is a roster of shooters. This is a roster of gunny players that are going to out-frag a lot of teams. Is that going to be enough to carry you into the deep stages of a tournament? We felt, no, we were wrong. These guys are doing great work, but none more so than QK. This guy is hitting a different level right now. Truly, I mean, arguably the best player in challenges at the minute. If they go on to win this tournament, he's MVP without a doubt. You've pulled it up here as well. They pull off a 2v4 in round 11 against Project Notorious. If that's not going to give you wind in your sails, I don't know what will. And they clearly took that belief then into the Omit Brooklyn series because they'll pull off another game 5 there.
Yeah, it was a little bit wild to kind of see this happen. I mean, even just QK dropping a 14-6 in a search and destroy, man, and against a really good team of Diamond Con Afro, Eric Boom, and Beans at that. It's wild to just see that happen. I love that QK. We've been big fans of QK here, and I love seeing that even on this sort of new roster, is able to be here, is able to be that driving force, and I think a lot of times can kind of be that player that it takes off a lot of the pressure from maybe some of the other players on the team that is there, just being just an absolute shooter. There's a different hard point as well. I think it was the hard point to get them into this one. I have to double check, but where it was a black heart where they drop like him and Roxas as an AR duo, drop 59 kills together, like absolutely insane. And so I like to see that we're starting to see a couple of these pieces start to slide on in for these teams. It definitely makes a lot of sense why it feels like the Falcons Academy really want to build around QK and try and give him as many pieces of the puzzle as they need to try and have a successful roster.
I agree. I know we want to touch later on the Saudi Arabian region, even bloody hell, tongue twister. But we'll get to that conversation. But for me, QK, I don't know if his English is really strong and if he's in the position to do so. There's got to be teams looking at him right now because this guy is putting up ridiculous numbers and has been for some time. But it's just now gotten to a moment where it's like, okay, this guy's now taking that to a whole different level to beat out Notorious, to beat out Brooklyn, do it in style. If this squad walk into those winners final off the back of the Bush game, then that guy, his stock's looking really bloody good. And the thing is with Falcons Academy as well, I'd argue that you've arguably faced, with the form that Bush are in, kind of neither here nor there. You've already beaten them earlier on in the tournament. I'd argue that you could beat them in this winners finals.
We'll have to wait and see. That is there. Some brewings happening in the bracket. Let's talk about it. So with that, though, we just covered everything that did happen in the bracket. Let's talk about what's going to happen in the bracket, though. Andy and I thought it'd be pretty fun to do a little bit of just sort of a bracket prediction. How do we think some of these games are going to go ahead and turn out? We alluded to it when talking about the Falcons Academy there. Let's continue that conversation with this winners finals match between the Telluride Bush and Falcons Academy Green. You brought up a great point, right? Falcons Academy Green have already faced the Bush through this event, right, over there in, of course, the group stages that were there. And Falcons Academy Green were able to win, at least, feel good about that series, right, being able to take it to the Bush. I don't think it's going to be a 3-0 by any stretch of the imagination what's there. And what has me a little bit worried is that if you look at the paths to get to this winners finals, this favors Falcons Academy Green. You said it. It's two heavy-hitting opponents that they have to go up against to get here. For Bush, it's the two teams that bow out in 7th and 8th, right, that are that you have to go up against to get here. Doesn't really give you the confidence. You did go to a map 5 against that face Falcons. Heck yeah, it was a 3-0 against For Fun and Fellow. That was there, but I just, I think the Bush are good. I just would hate to see them get caught flat-footed.
Yeah, it's a weird one because realistically, Bush earned their number 1 seed and as such get the weaker side of the bracket. So they're guaranteed unless they completely choke, guaranteed a deeper spot. So, I mean, you can't really argue against that. You can only knock down what's set up in front of you, I guess. But I think for me, it's partially that, and that we haven't seen them as battle tested yet. but also the fact that, I mean, Falcons absolutely belted them on last week's final group games. So it's a case of, all right, well, that will no doubt be fresh in the mind for the Bush. Also, for me, Falcons are coming into this having just pulled off masterclasses against these two other great sides. So for me, I think Falcons Academy take this winners finals and move on through, and knowing them in another game 5, that's how they're going to get it done.
Okay, I like the prediction. I'm hoping that Bush are able to hold on to it, just because I would love to be able to finally see Bush be the caliber of team I think that we've come to expect, right? So I think Falcons Academy Green should. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I'm going to get ahead of myself. I think, Bush will come out from Falcons Academy Green, and I think that that's going to be our grand finals again. I think just how Falcons Academy Green looks, it doesn't matter. But like I said, kind of getting ahead of myself. On the lower side, I think we can kind of all see how this is going to come on out. I would be a little bit surprised if Omit Brooklyn dropped to Death by Cabal, because I think that Brooklyn team is insane. They only are down here because they lose to Falcons Academy Green in that manner that we kind of were talking about earlier. So it's not like Brooklyn is here because of some fluke, right? It was a super close game 5. Okay, great. And then on the other side, you have For Fun and Fellow taking on Project Notorious. And I mean, those are actually 2 really solid rosters. I think maybe that could be one of the closer ones that we see throughout this lower side of the bracket. I don't know how we feel about this matchup. For Fun Esports, or Fun and Fellow, as I'll call them, taking on Project Notorious.
I've already tried to get ahead of myself a little bit here and predict some of it in my head. So I'm gonna leap a little bit forward. Yeah. I agree with you that Brooklyn beat Death by Cabal. I think Notorious beat For Fun and Fellow, because I think Notorious then beat Brooklyn. Because for me, the only reason Project Notorious are in this lower bracket is because they choked a 4v2 in around 11. Otherwise, you beat the Falcons Academy team that we really like and are saying they're going to be in the grand finals. So I think that puts more stock into Notorious for me. Sure. I do agree with you. Brooklyn, ridiculously good squad. And they also went to a game 5 against Falcons Academy. But I don't know. There's just something about Notorious. You should have won. You should have won the series. Yeah. And to not do, it was a case of, okay, do you then wobble a bit in the lower portion of the bracket? No, they walk out 3-0. So I think they come into this week with a little bit of steel about them, recognizing that actually if they do get to the deeper stage of this bracket against that Falcons Academy team, it's like, well, we should have beaten them last time. Let's just do that again.
I think that's a great call out to make there, right? Obviously, I think coming in, I think, like you said, I mean, they are only here because they lose a 2v4. And those are kind of one of those things that sometimes you just got to kind of chalk it up to be like, wow, we sucked in that moment, right? Yep. We gotta play better as a team, but you can't ignore everything else that happened in the series, right? So I think that's a good call out. That Project Notorious, I think, will go up against them at Brooklyn. Would I be surprised to see Brooklyn move on? No, I do think Project Notorious is a little bit of the stronger team there. And then we get to that losers finals where I do think it'll be Falcons Academy Green taking on Project Notorious. That's going to be a really fun matchup just because, like you said, it's on one side, you have a battle-tested Falcons Academy, and on the other side, you have Project Notorious who are kind of looking for a little bit of revenge, looking for a little bit of blood.
Wait, you have Bush beating Falcons Academy in winners finals?
Yeah!
Oh, I don't at all. I have Falcons Academy winning winners finals and then marching on. Okay, all right. So, I mean, I guess this, for both of us, I guess the question is, I think if Notorious come up against Bush in lower finals, they win. I think if they come up against Falcons Academy, they lose. That's what I'm going to go with. Okay. I just feel like, there's something, I have like this newfound belief in Falcons Academy, even though there was that 4v2 moment. For me, I don't know, the Saudi players have shown a lot over the last couple of years at their ability to grow and develop and VOD review and everything else. I think they look at that series and go, okay, that was incredibly tight. How do we make change-ups? And that's what they do it. Again, would I be surprised if Project Notorious come in and absolutely blow it out of the water? I mean, if Afro Beans, Diamond Con, and Eric Boom, they're gross. So, no, not at all. Could see them making the run all the way from low round 1, to be honest, and winning the damn thing. So,
hey, listen, I'm for that storyline too, right? Like, I think that's what's so fun is that sometimes we look at these brackets and it's really easy. You're kind of feel like you're reading the tea leaves where you're like, yeah, like we all kind of can see how this is going to go ahead and end on up, but there's a couple different scenarios how this bracket could play out through the rest of the day, the rest of the day this week, and I think that'd be really, really fun. We'll definitely come back because I think next week we'll come back. We'll look at our bracket predictions. We'll look at our power rankings, see how wrong we were. Maybe we'll figure that one out.
I think to clarify here very quickly, we got to set our top 3. For me, Falcons Academy, Notorious, Bush.
I think I'm going Bush, Falcons Academy, Notorious.
Okay, all right. So we're about to get a lot of hate from Brooklyn fans. That's going to be great. All right, sweet, cool. All right, looking forward to that. All right, okay.
In both scenarios, Brooklyn's 4th, if that's any consolation.
Yeah. Well, yes, I doubt it. I doubt it. I'm gonna have Rafi in my messages. Hey man, look, all right, I've supported you over the years. Nah, he never would. He would never do that.
No, it'd be fine. But hey, let us know. Are we completely faded? Do you agree with us? Do you hate everything we just said about your favorite team that is there? I mean, I'm curious to see how this looks, man, at the end of this week. But also in Challengers news, and this is a very fun one, we see the FC Stallions sign yet again a new roster. But I got faith in this one, Enigma, because this is that original Cabal roster that we started the year with in Icons, KB, Millie, and Rooper, okay? Now, when we kickstarted this year, this team looked unguardable, right? They were going up against some of the top teams in the game, like from a CDL level. They were really holding it on down. I know you and I had some very early predictions that, hey, these are going to be some of the top players that maybe get pulled up to the CDL first in some of these moves. That doesn't happen because eventually this team does blow up. But I like that these 4 players are coming back here together. And they're going to be playing underneath the Stallions. And I think that this could be a new team to enter the foray when we talk about future cups, you know, Elite Season 3, what have you, that we're going to have to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I'm glad they're coming back together for Stallions. I felt cheated out of what could have been their potential. You know what I mean? Like, you and me, we got to cast over them in the early stages of the season. We're doing a lot of watching as well. And it was a case of, we looked at this team, it felt perfectly balanced. It felt like you had your role man in Icons, you had your superstars, you also had players that were willing to fit the gaps in between. S&D, you had players that were willing to pull out snipers, routes. They knew their frags very early. They were a good team early on in the year. You know, a lot of those early cups and stuff, they came second in Cup 1, but I'm talking about the preseason cups, if you will. Always top 3, even winning a couple. And then it felt like they just started to slide once the pressure was really on. I feel like a lot of eyes on them potentially. And I think sometimes there's a dynamic in a roster, inside a locker room in professional sports, but inside a roster when it comes to esports here. And that is when you suddenly start to assess maybe your worth is a bit more. I should be on a bigger roster. I should be alongside other superstar names. I think that frays the relationships between the players just a little bit. They all go off on their separate paths. And historically, all of these players have kind of been like those top 16 kind of players. They get into the elite, but they kind of get burnt straight out of it. And this feels like, I don't know, they kind of went on their own ways thinking they'd all achieve individual success. Very glad to see that they've kind of gone, you know what, that boy band that we had, that was kind of doing all right. We were selling out on tour. Let's go do it again. So yeah, they come back in as a 4. They'll definitely be one of my favorite Stallions rosters, I think. I know that they've always had like incredibly entertaining rosters, but in terms of actual competitive viability, this one looks really bloody good, and I think it's going to represent well.
It does, and Zoomaa actually comes on, and this is an insane video. Not from any of the content, but just because I got Subway Surfers, the announcement tweet, and Zoomaa talking at the same time. But basically the gist of the idea that you can hear him say there, where he says, I didn't want 4 individuals. I wanted a team. And I think he's just felt that exact, obviously, like, you know, Tom knows what goes on in Challengers, but it does feel like a couple of these past Stallions rosters were just those 4 talented individuals that were just trying to maybe, like, you know, round hole square peg trying to happen, and it didn't really work. And so you say, hey, here are 4 people who very early on in the game looked like they had their shit together. Now let's go ahead. Let's bring them underneath the Stallions banner after they've all gone off and learned from all these different people. Okay, now that we're into the game a little bit more, they can only kind of be better, I feel like, right? And that's kind of my thing, is that you've all had these experiences, and to be able to come in and have what feels like more of a team is going to be really, really clutch, I feel like. And that's why it gives me a lot of hope for that roster, right? This isn't a roster where we talk about, oh, this guy did this and this guy did this. This is like, no, there's proven stat lines with these 4 players playing together against some very heavy-hitting teams. And with that is why I think when they get ready to come on into some of the cups and season 3, that they are going to feel like be a little bit of a step of ahead from maybe some of these other rosters that might form.
It'll be interesting because Millie was on Stallions Black for this elite, so he's done. The rest of the players, not particularly a great stage to really. I mean, I'm taking a quick scan through here, but I'm pretty sure that they're basically all burnt as well. So I guess what is their first experience together going to be? Do we have a cup this weekend? I'm just triple checking my calendar. We obviously have the Open. Yes, we have Cup 8 this weekend, so they're going to get that. Okay. And then if they're going to Birmingham, which you got to assume so, signing with the Stallions.
Maybe
that will be one of their first forays. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out. I think if that goes well, or at least good enough so it's like, okay, we were a new squad coming back together. we've got potential, we could grow, then we see this roster stick. I'll be devastated if they go to the Open, absolutely get slammed and then split again. That would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, hopefully that's not the case, but I know you and I will be tuning into Cup 8 this weekend to really see how they do. But I think the key things to take away from this signing is exactly what Tom said, that he's signing a team, and that, it feels like a kind of almost like a new leaf for the Stallions, of where, Zoomaa really wants this team that represents his brand to represent them well, obviously, and that hasn't been the case for the past couple of rosters. This potentially could be a roster that finally puts some respect on the Stallions' name. Now, obviously, we love covering challengers and the news and roster mania and everything that goes on, but we also love COD. And I think a really fun topic for us to kind of talk about here is actually just going to be putting a little bit of a spotlight on the Saudi Arabian region when it comes to Call of Duty. Because I know something that you and I were very surprised with when, we went for Warzone, we went to that first esports World Cup, right? And we were just kind of like, is there love for COD? Like, this is in North America, the little EU, right, type of scene. Like, is there love for COD over here in the Middle East? Turns out, holy shit, yeah.
They love that shit.
There's a lot. These guys love Call of Duty. And it's been really interesting just to kind of like see that. And then we had that year in the CDL where the Riyadh Falcons kind of come on in, and they are, they try that sort of first roster where it was all Saudi, and very quickly kind of blow it up because they realize, oh, this isn't going to work. But it feels like, and I do think that the Falcons organization deserves, some credit alongside Rock as well as an esports org, of like trying to build up these players from the bottom, because it feels like now, Enigma, we finally have enough of a pool of players from that region that you could put together an insanely talented full Saudi roster that at least could be, I'm not going to say they'd be top tier, but at least could be competitive in the CDL, right? Like they could take maps off of good teams and put up a fight, and I think that's really all you got to try and hope for and try and look for. That's there. But this is something kind of Challengers Intel, tweeted out and teased up, and I know you and I had some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be better than Cloud9, let's put it that way. So, I mean, I say that. Cloud9 beat General Mate, so I don't really know where I'm going with that one. But, yeah, I mean, look, God bless that project. Okay, all right. But I agree with you. It's weird because being European, like, we saw an influx of Saudi teams a few years ago, actually, into the space. They were heavily judged, kind of mocked a bit. And it was over time, we kind of saw like, oh my God, these guys are actually getting better and better every single week. And it's kind of like, okay, they really are like coming over here to grow. This isn't just having money thrown at them. This isn't just like kind of, okay, we're going to give you guys an all expenses paid trip over to Europe. They were getting better and they started to really look good. Then they started to enter, obviously they entered that team into the CDL, and we were all kind of like, all right, you're not making that much of a jump. You need some more learning time, some simmering in the pot yet. But I mean, obviously, Xnid doing a good job at the minute for the Riyadh Falcons in the league. Feels like he's really hitting a different level now that he's been under a little bit of pressure from some of his teammates, and he's really starting to step through. But yeah, you're right. We've got the players list here: Kix, QK, Nox. But you've also got like Roxas. I mean, we've just had a conversation about how good QK is looking, and he's arguably going to be MVP of Stage 2 Elite. Even if his team lose, he's going to be like that vice MVP kind of situation because he's been so good. Obviously, you've got the Rock Esports roster that won the Open. So it's like, what was that? Doom, Domex, Rixold, and I'm missing someone off that list, but Gentle as well. He's a player that's coming on through. So it's like, we're talking like potentially like, when you go over and win that North American Open, I think that is the moment where we go, oh, wait, these guys aren't just bullying the European teams over there. If they come over to North America right now, they'd be competitive. So it's like, we could have 3 or 4 competitive Saudi rosters in North America right now. And then it's like, all right, well, if they just keep on that same trend, surely league bound.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, even just watching, you and I got to look at and watch that series from the Dallas Open with Rock Esports roster. Kix was the last player, by the way, on that team. So,
thank you.
But it was really fun to just watch them kind of come on in. And they looked like they were just a completely different team than everybody else. Like there was a little bit of hey, they beat out the Telluride Bush in grand finals. Every game is pretty close, but it's like the games they were winning, yes, they were close, but it was also like some like intermap things that you're not always going to see from like a stat sheet, right? Where it's like they're making the right plays at the right time, and it's like the fundamentals are there, and And you're starting to see that with some of these players. And it kind of has me wondering, right? Is that what we're kind of see with this Falcons Academy green roster? Is there going to be some type of iteration of that? By the end of the year, do we see a Falcons roster of some way, shape, or form, at least in challengers, that is full Saudi and is going to just absolutely like be a top contending team that will be a force to be reckoned with? Because I feel like we're close. I feel like we're getting there.
I think one of the interesting things on this is kind of like we keep talking about a full Saudi roster. I think one of the problems for these players at the minute is they are a little bit pigeonholed in that pocket.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One of them, potential language barriers. We don't really know. And even if players' languages, or their English language is good, it's a case of, yes, but is it natural? Which is what you need when it comes to competitive play. And we've seen various instances of this where it doesn't work. It can be difficult. But then it's a case of, if these players want to get into the league, I think that you kind of have to develop into more of an individual brand, because the way these teams play, and we saw it with Rock Esports, the reason people couldn't keep up, they were a wolf pack. They very much so played together and swarmed everything, hit everything with true force. If you picked up one of these players and threw them into a North American lineup, would you be able to do that? I don't know. So it's interesting right now. It's kind of like, it feels like you've either got to take a foursome, which who's going to gamble on that except for Riyadh Falcons, and they've obviously outlaid on a ridiculously expensive roster. Or does someone else decide to gamble on one or two of the players? And it's kind of, again, it's like, are you stuck in that pigeonhole that someone's going to take that risk?
Yeah, no, it's a tough situation to kind of be there. But I think the key thing here is that we will definitely be keeping our eyes on a lot of these players, a lot of more of the region, because it feels like every year we are getting more and more sort of superstars coming out of that region that could be next up to get picked up into the CDL. A lot to look forward to this week in Challengers, seeing the wrap up of Season 2, but also the Cup 8 that's happening with some new rosters that are looking to make a name for themselves. It's going to be a really fun time. Enigma, what do you think that we can expect coming over the next week?
Looking forward to Cup 8. I think that's the big one right now, because that gives everyone that kind of confidence boost or ego dump, if you will, as to whether or not you're going to Birmingham feeling good. Obviously, it depends on which teams are playing in Birmingham. For starters, a couple of these squads, we've already seen tweets out of like Josh, CDC Intel, being like, North American rosters have waited until now to ask for orgs. That's an interesting call. And yes, very interesting call, because that's an expensive trip to make. So I hope you've got some money in your pocket, gentlemen. But I think, we get a good look at this weekend on both regions, right? Rock Esports still looking as good as they have been through most of the year. And then we go over to Birmingham. And obviously then it's a case of, I think the first day, let everyone kind of settle in before we start to make any sort of like, okay, that team looked very comfortable, etc. But yeah, a lot of great COD coming up, my friend. Can't wait to watch it all.